Welcome to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show with your hosts, Phil Proctor and Ted Bunnett. Phil and Ted's guest today is pop music's most endearing and enduring star, 5-time Grammy winner, Weird Al Yankovic. And now, your sexy boomer hosts and masters of self-parody, Phil Proctor and Ted Bunnett.
Welcome to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. I'm Ted Bunnett.
Yeah, and I'm Phil Proctor, and we're very, very, very pleased today to be talking to Weird Al Yankovic.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Welcome.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here in your backyard, so to speak.
Yes, you're up in our upper patio, my upper patio here in Benedict Canyon. We got out of the bunker today just to, let some air circulate in there, okay? And we figure we're in the open air, so we have taken off our masks, okay? and there will be hugging, Al, but at a safe social distance.
Absolutely, yes.
We've been inside for months now, and Phil and I are just trying to break out when we can and see each other. So we're at a very socially safe distance. But we always have been, haven't we, Phil?
Well, we've been kind of at a cold personal distance
Yeah,
from one another.
yeah.
I don't know if that counts.
We've always been distant, but now we're actually medically distant.
I'll remain emotionally distant just to help things out here.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
You are a fixture in so many people's consciousness over the decades. Everybody knows about Al.
Yeah.
But do we really know Al?
I can answer that, Al. If you remember, the first time that we met face to face was at our dry cleaners.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
I'm going to take your word for that. I don't actually... When would that have been? Like 83, 84?
Something like that. I can remember what you were wearing.
What?
And what you took from the dry cleaners, some shirts that they had actually ruined. And we had a talk about legal representation and things like that. But I had to go do some shopping at Gelson's, so I kind of left you in a lurch, which you drove home in fact.
Wow. That's impressive.
Well, we like to inspire one another. We obviously all love to play with words, whatever they are, and how slippery they are, and how evanescent they are, and how they can have so many different levels of meanings, at least from the Fireside Theater perspective. But that's the way I think. I think associatively. Now, I know that when you're working on your song parodies, you are an intense deconstructionist and reconstructionist, right? I mean, you really are a perfectionist.
Yeah, I mean, people write it off like, oh, he was just doing this silly comedy, and my 4-year-old makes fun of the songs on the radio, and it's not quite what I do, because I spend a lot of time, I obsess over every single syllable. I want to make sure that it scans rhythmically. When the New York Times did a piece on me, they kind of documented my process a bit. I mean, for every verse that I write, I've got like 12 different variations. Like every line, I try to see if I can express that thought slightly differently.
Wow.
Change the words around just a little bit or use a different word, because there's a lot of different ways you can say something, but in my mind there's only one way has to be the best. So I explore all possibilities, and that way I'm more like Edison than Tesla, because Tesla would just like go, okay, well, this is the best idea, obviously, and Edison would say, no, let's think of all 1,000 possible variations and then figure it out.
I have employees I have to take care of, right?
The art of the parody is much more than meets the eye or the ear. From what I read and actually spoke to friends who are professional musicians, a friend of mine, Marty Rifkin.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I mentioned that we were going to talk, and the first thing he said was, it's all about music for Al.
That's really nice to hear, man. I feel bad for my band sometimes because I don't feel like they get the respect they deserve. But they've been playing with me for over 30 years, and they play every genre imaginable. And I think they're, in my unbiased opinion, I think they're, the best band in the world. And they don't often get the respect because we do comedy music. And some people, I mean, there's a part of their brain that thinks, oh, it's comedy, therefore it can't be as good or include as much craft as a quote-unquote normal song. And that's just not true. I mean, the only difference is the lyrics are humorous, and everything else has to be just as good, if not better, than the original.
That's what Lin Manuel Miranda said. He calls himself a Weird Al obsessive, and he credited you as an influence on Hamilton.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Is
said
that
he,
something?
Yeah, he once lip-synced Taco Grande in front of a 6th grade class, and said that he preferred Weird Al songs to the originals because you're a perfectionist.
Lin has become a close friend of mine, and that's just so nice to hear because, we just have so much mutual admiration. But, Lin would talk about how he learned through me that music, that genres are fluid. Like listening to my polka medleys, he realized that, just the way that a song is presented, is malleable. Just because a song is first perceived in a certain way, it doesn't always need to be perceived that way. It can be changed around and it can be fluid.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. The only time the Firesign Theater did a completely musical album was called Fighting Clowns, artwork by the late great Phil Hartman, and we called ourselves the 8 Shoes. Okay, and we went out to a thrift store and we found 4 matching robin's egg blue tuxedos, right? And we put on our patent leather shoes and we performed, we rehearsed and performed a whole bunch of songs with kind of skits in between to tie them together. And we performed it at the Roxy and recorded it live. And then Jeff Skunk Baxter added some great, riffs to it in the studio. And it was amazingly satisfying.
Right.
Now, did you have any influence from Firesign Theater? I know in reading your book, The Book of Al, I saw a lot of references to people that we should talk about, like Tom Lehrer and Spike Jones. But I didn't read the whole thing, so I don't know if you mentioned Firesign, which is unimportant. What was your relationship to us?
I'm not sure.
Make something up.
I'm not sure if Firesign is mentioned in the book, but you guys absolutely influenced me. I've stolen stuff from you guys. Everything you know is wrong is obviously a direct ripoff of Firesign Theater, which I made that the title of one of my songs. It's They Might Be Giants pastiche, but that's completely from you guys, obviously.
Oh, and let me just get my lawyer on the line. We'll continue talking.
When you do parodies, people like to riff off of songs and they think it's just slapdash, just throw some funny words together and the music's already written, you're just reflecting it. But that's not how you work. I read that you go into a deep trance state for quite an extended period.
Yeah.
And you just whittle word by syllables into line by line, and this is a very meticulous process for you.
Yeah, it's maybe when I first started out, when I was just like goofing on the Dr. Demento show, I would like whip out lyrics in a very short period of time. I think when I did another one, Rides the Bus, that was written in like 20 minutes or something. That was just, I need something funny to do on the show this weekend. But after I started getting a little bit of popularity and people started to actually care about my body of work, I realized, I have to live with these songs for, quite an extended period of time, so maybe I should put some thought and effort into this. So now whenever I write anything, it involves a lot of effort, and I agonize over every semicolon that I that I write.
That's one of the many reasons you have so many Grammys.
And I thanked the Firesign Theater in my first Grammy speech.
Yes, well, that's right. Was that your first Grammy when you destroyed Our Chance?
That was, yeah. No, I remember we were at the party the night before the Grammy party, and we made a pact. Like if one of us won the Grammy, we had to thank the other person. So
that's right.
So I won, and I thanked you.
Well, if we had to lose to anybody, losing to you was,
And what were the 2 works?
Oh gosh.
Mine was Eat It in 80. That would have been 84, 85. So what was yours? I forget.
Was it the Three Faces of Al?
Right.
The first comedy CD?
Was that the very first comedy CD ever?
Yes.
Yes, right.
We pioneered that particular expression.
And you were going up against Eat It.
And we did. And in fact, on the cover of one of these magazines that was out there then, I don't know, Electronics in Your Ear or whatever it was, they had a picture of us at dinner. This is for the cover, eating CDs. I know.
Ooh.
See, that just shuts you right up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just remind me that so many brilliant photographers that year had photo setups with me eating things. So, yeah, that was one of many, I'm sure.
Well, I want to tell you one thing, because you are talking about how agonizing the process of writing can be, and then how satisfying it is when you've got it and it's accepted and loved. Firesign Theater, 4 guys writing together. I could say exactly the same thing. Okay, my zombie state would be we're working on some album or something. I'd go to sleep, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night, or sometimes, if I don't know if that happens to you, and there'd be the line that I wanted or the idea that I wanted, and I'd write it down in the dark, and then in the morning I'd look up and it'd say, and I go, great, I'll bring it into the guys, they'll love it. And we used to agonize horribly over various ideas and words and all kinds of stuff. And then we'd go into the studio and we'd start improvising, and sometimes we'd just throw the scripts away because that was like a blueprint for something that we were going to build on the spot, and we'd come up with some great stuff.
Wow, I had the same experience. Whenever I write, I always keep a pen and paper by the nightstand by my bed, because most of my ideas come to me in the middle of the night when I'm half asleep, and I'll wake up and I'll have a great idea. I'll write a Bargle Noddle's house or whatever on the paper, because I've learned that if I just think, oh, this is great, this is brilliant, I'll remember it in the morning. That is never the case.
No, never. It's never the case. No, it's terrible. It's terrible.
We put together sort of a chronological outline preparing for this conversation. What a fascinating background you have. Even in the early days, your mother served you a bowl of sauerkraut every morning for breakfast?
That's lyrics on one of my songs, and I have to warn you, not all of my songs are completely autobiographical.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Well, I'm not, because I'm of Amish ancestry, and I loved your Amish Paradise parody. But I just finished pork chops and sauerkraut with apples and onions, which I made. Okay, sauerkraut is like a staple of our Amish diet.
Now I'm really glad we're socially distanced.
I actually ate a lot of sauerkraut growing up, so I think my distaste for sauerkraut is the one lie that I tell in that song. Everything else is true.
And you're a vegetarian still?
I am.
A vegan?
I lost my card-carrying vegan status because I do cheat on cheese every now and then, cheese on ice cream every now and then. So I'm leaning vegan, but
cheese on ice cream, Parmesan and Rocky Road, my favorite.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Even Rocky Road. Rocky Road is a double threat because the marshmallow in Rocky Road is usually made with gelatin, so that would not be vegetarian.
How long have you been a vegan-vegetarian?
Since about 92.
Great.
What made you do that?
I read a book called Diet for a New America that was given to me by a friend, and it made a pretty compelling case. And I just thought, okay, let's do this. And I haven't looked back.
I remember that book was printed on soy paper, and you could eat it.
Yeah.
Well, here we go.
Right. Well, listen, Al, you were kind enough to invite my wife Melinda and I to see your show, I think down at Orange County at the county fair years ago. And I was absolutely blown away at the energy that you had on that stage.
Well, thanks.
Also, the band. Oh, my God. The power of that band. And your costume changes and your video inserts and everything. I mean, I was humbled to see what you did.
Well, thank you.
In the New York Times article you mentioned, obviously written by a fan, who happened to be a great writer, too.
Wonderful.
He opened the article about his experience of watching your show in Forest Hills in New York. And he was so taken by not only the enthusiasm of your fans and your base, I mean, you have a huge fan base, and the dedication to them. And what he was struck by was the inclusiveness and what you do and what it really means to your fans. What is your view of the relationship you have to your fevered fans?
I definitely have that feeling whenever I walk out on stage. It's like they're part of my extended family. I mean, a lot of the people that come to see me in concert, they've been coming to shows for decades now, and now they're bringing their kids, and it really does feel like they're my friends. So at the end of the night when I say I love you all, I mean that's sincere. I mean I definitely feel like I have a bond with these people.
And you come out after the show and spend a lot of time with them.
As much as I can, yeah. I mean, sometimes I spend more time after the show, hanging out and signing autographs and taking pictures than the actual show, But it's great for me and it's great for them, and I like to, hang out. I hope that someday in the future we can do that again.
Yeah, for sure. You used to memorize certain, funny songs and things that you heard. I did the same with Tom Lehrer, okay? And I really think that's one of the reasons why Firesign fans and your fans are so feel like they're part of us, part of our family. And in fact, when we used to change any lines in our live shows from some of our records, they would be very upset.
So it's a little daunting sometimes because people know the material so well. I'm always afraid of the comments online afterwards, like, I'll change this one syllable of the song.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, right. That's not the way it is on the single.
I wrote the song. It's my prerogative to change it at a moment's notice if I feel like it, okay?
Here. Right, right.
What do you think it is that people are so connected to you?
It's hard to say. I mean, part of it's just, the sheer longevity and tenacity, and I've just been doing this for a very, very long time. And I think humor really resonates with people in a stronger way than maybe even they realize. I mean, to make somebody feel good or to cheer somebody up or to make them laugh, that's a powerful thing. If somebody's like not having a good day or trying to get over some, traumatic thing in their life and my music helps them snap out of it, I mean, that has an effect and people don't forget that.
Someone described you as a sober, clean-living, fiscally responsible, extraordinarily well-preserved, consummate mensch with a pristine reputation.
Ooh.
And I think that really just boils down to you're just a really nice person.
Oh. Well, I like that reputation, but it always confuses me a little bit because most of my friends are nice. I mean, I don't know a lot of jerks in the business. I'm sure there are, but I mean, you guys are nice. I mean, but why do I get the reputation? I like it. I'm not going to say anything against that, but yeah, I like being I like being known as nice. Why not?
People have said that you are the nicest person they've ever met or worked with.
They should get out more.
I wrote it.
In a set or situation where you're given some lines and there's a curse word in it, you'll just politely, of course,
You tell them to screw off.
You are adverse to using profanity?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just never have. That's sort of the way I was raised and how I grew up, and I just don't feel comfortable doing that, and I just don't want to be a bad role model to kids, because I didn't set out to be a role model or to have this kind of image or brand, but that's kind of the way it turned out. And I know a lot of kids listen to my music, and I just don't want to do anything that would, not be appropriate or expose them to things that they don't want to see or hear.
And that's wonderful.
The other thing that people have recognized about what you do is that you're respectful of the sources that you parody.
Yeah, and you don't have to, but you ask permission.
Yeah, the phrase that I always use is gray area, because legally, it's not that I could get away with anything I want to do, but the courts rule in my favor. Historically, parody artists have been able to do what they do without any kind of legal action. But that's not the way that I've done business, because I respect artists and I want to make sure that they're okay with what I do. I don't want to step on toes. I don't want to burn any bridges. I just want to make sure that everybody's on board with the parody. And if they're not, I'll back away. I don't have a problem doing that.
Mm-hmm. The Lady Gaga parody that you did, and what you had to go through really before you learned that her gang, her company, hadn't even talked to her for her permission, right? It's so often getting through the bureaucracy of the business is so much like that.
That's why I always try to talk directly to the artist if at all possible, because the people between me and the artist usually mess it up. The Lady Gaga thing was really a torturous experience, because her manager at the time made me jump through so many hoops and ultimately just said, nah, she doesn't want you to do it. And then after the fact, I found out that she hadn't even been told about it, and she was fine with it, and she was honored. But I mean, that's the toughest part, is like trying to do the right thing, and then all these people just kind of like stand in your way.
It was so suitable for her too, because you're one of the other things that you do that we have in common is your sense of the surreal. Okay, and also your sartorial sense, your right, your costumes and everything. How did you assemble this team? I'm sure it took a while to do it, but how did you assemble this extraordinary technical theatrical team of such excellence?
In terms of doing the music videos, or what are you referring to?
Well, everything. The music videos are extremely well produced. You know, I love the fact that you recreated the Buster Keaton gag.
Oh, thank you.
In the Amish Paradise. Oh man.
Well, since you brought that up, let me just tell you that was one of the scariest moments of my life, because we had one take on that. And that was not any CGI or special effect or green screen. That was me in the middle of a field with a full, house frame falling down around me, barely missing my head. And on top of that, I was told that the wood might torque a little bit, so they reinforced the wood with steel beams. So that it would land properly. But it also meant that if it hit me, I would be dead instantly. So when you see me in the video, I'm there thinking, okay, we have one take. Try not to look like you're scared out of your mind. And if you survive, it'll be a funny shot.
It sure was. But it's a good thing to know that you would have been killed instantly.
Yes.
That was comforting.
No pain involved.
No, that's right. But anyway, in your show, the show that I saw, which I'm sure is typical of most of your wonderful theatrical presentations, all the costuming and everything was just perfect. What I'm trying to ask is, how much control do you have over that, and how did you find some people that you could trust that would help you realize your vision?
I'm pretty much in charge creatively of my live show. I put together the set list. I determine what the costume is going to be. I'm actually editing all of the video that you see on the screen myself on my computer. That's all me. So it's but obviously I'm not the person sewing the costumes together. So I hire the appropriate people to actually build the wardrobe. Right. The fat mask that I wear on stage was actually created by Kevin Yeager, who's one of the top special effects guys in the business, and he did the original fat costume back in '88. But yeah, I try to work with very talented people, and from my band on up, and that it makes me look good.
One of the things that I enjoyed so much in your show was it's the Eat It number, right, where you wear the fat suit.
Yeah.
And you jump up in the air and come down on the stage, and everybody in the auditorium was lifted off their seats by the force of your landing. And I just loved that. It was like hell's a poppin'. Molson and Johnson, they did immersive theater where things would happen in the audience as part of the show, and people would pop up in the audience. It's actually the first time I was ever on the stage, now that I think of it, in New York City at a performance of Hell's a Poppin'. I was called up to do a hula dance, and I remember looking off to the side of the stage and seeing a big fat stagehand smoking a cigar standing off stage, and I went, "This is show business. I want to do this. Pretty girls and fat guys with cigars, let's go."
So that was your epiphany. That was your moment.
In your childhood, you had a
fat guy with a cigar? Yeah, I did, but
a door-to-door salesman came and with musical instruments. You had a choice between a guitar and an accordion at age 7. Is this a true story?
It is. Yeah, I think I think I was maybe 6 at the time, because I remember my first accordion lesson was the day before my 7th birthday. And it sounds like a joke, but at the time when they were door-to-door salesmen, imagine that today. But at the time, somebody came around to our neighborhood and knocked on our door, and they're from a music school, and they asked my parents if their young child would like to take accordion lessons or guitar lessons. And my parents, in their infinite wisdom, decided that I would be much more popular in high school if I took accordion lessons, because who wouldn't want an accordion player at their party? You're a one-man band. You're the life of any party.
This is during the era of the Beatles and the 60s rock and roll scene, right?
I think this is about the time that Revolver came out, so the accordion was just really coming into its own.
Now, were your folks musical at all?
Not really. My mom, not really. My dad thought he was musical. He picked up an old guitar for $10 at a garage sale, and he would strum it tunelessly and sing at the top of his lungs. So I don't know if you'd call that musical or not, but maybe that's where I got some of my shamelessness.
Yeah, right.
He was a World War II hero, a double Purple Heart awardee.
Yes, indeed. Fought in the Battle of the Bulge.
Wow.
So did my dad as well.
Nice.
But your dad was also a bit of a goofball. Did he give you your irreverent sense of humor?
I think so. I think I'm a little bipolar that way because my mom was very reserved and my dad was very gregarious and outgoing and kind of a goof. So I've definitely got a little bit of both of that in my personality. I kind of, change depending on the situation. But yeah, I kind of have both extremes from my parents.
Your mother sheltered you.
Mary was her name.
She really sheltered you and protected you. And as a result, if I read correctly, you didn't have much of a free social life when you were young. You
didn't have any, according to the stuff I
Well, according to the book.
The Book of Al, right.
Okay, I was trying to be polite. Tell us a little bit about that, because it seems like when you finally did break away from that, you really broke away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go wild or anything, but I did enjoy my freedom at the time. I started school early. I started high school when I was 12 years old and graduated when I was 16.
Valedictorian.
Yeah, up until like my senior year, it was a very protective kind of upbringing. My folks wouldn't let me visit my friends at their house. If somebody wanted to play with me, they had to come to my house. So my mom could keep an eye on them. She famously would watch me through binoculars out the kitchen window because my high school was right across the street from our house.
Oh, no kidding.
It was it's a little much. And I remember when I was 15 years old and they had just denied me to do something I really wanted to do. I remember saying very, very passive-aggressively, "It's okay, Mom. Next year I'll be in college and I can do anything I want to do." And I think that was kind of a wake-up call. She was like, maybe we better loosen the strings a little bit and let Al get used to his freedom.
I just wonder, with the binoculars, did you get some flack from your peers at that point?
Oh, I did, but I was a nerd anyway, so you hardly noticed it, I just got the normal abuse.
You got the moniker Weird Al because of your nerdiness, really, right? In college.
Right. I wasn't trying to be weird, but people thought I was sort of unusual. And
yeah.
And I got that nickname, and it wasn't an affectionate nickname, I don't think. I was, there goes Weird Al. And I just kind of took it on professionally because I just wanted to own that. I wanted to say, all right, fine, I'm weird. Let's run with this.
Yeah, I think we're all bozos on this bus. Yeah. That's one of the things that you talked about earlier when you were talking about the audience. One of the things that our audiences love about us is that I can't tell you how many times I've heard this, and maybe you have too. You saved my life. I thought I was the only crazy person. I thought I was crazy until I met some other people who also liked the Firesign Theater and had memorized, a side of their album. And I realized that I'm not crazy, and there are other people who think creatively like I do. Have you had people talk to you like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, people talk all the time about how when they go to a Weird Al concert, it's sort of like they're finding friends that they never knew they had, that they belong to something, like, oh, there are other people that enjoy this and think this way, and I'm not alone.
That's right.
You're listening to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show with our special guest, Weird Al Yankovic. We'll be right back.
Hello, dear friends. This is Eric Burden. Yes, they did take away our music, but now you can have it back on these 3 wonderful voice prints of the 60s. All your magic memories of flying over the music capitals of the world will come rushing back with the first twang of a lead guitar. Now listen to all the monsters of the 60s at once. The Rolling Who, Derek and the Taylors, Clive Beadle, Bing Crosby, Stills and Ogden Nash. Songs like I've Got My Hand on Your Mouse, Helicopter 59, Tight Shoes, I'll Be Gumping You, and hundreds of others. Goodness gracious, great God Almighty, it's like having Now right in your living room. So don't wait till the midnight hour. Send 15 seconds in code or credit to Rock and Roll Memory Bank, Hong Kong, New York, York.
You're listening to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. To hear all the Sexy Boomer shows and get your hands on our Sexy Boomer bumper sticker, visit sexyboomershow.com. Look for Sexy Boomer Show on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe to our podcast right now by clicking the subscribe button in your podcast player. Back to Phil Proctor and Ted Bonnet and their special guest, Weird Al Yankovic.
Al, there's a parallel to someone else who also was teasingly nicknamed Weird, and later became very well known and successful.
Mm-hmm.
My first job in radio was the last freeform rock and roll station in the New York area, and we were there about a year, and a new hire came in. His name was Howard Stern, and he was still very much a straight DJ. And this was KRP on acid. I mean, this was a wild rock and roll, unsupervised radio station, and Howard comes in. In private parts, he very faithfully recreates exactly what he looked like and how he behaved, which was, this is Howard Stern with you from 10 till 2 today. That was Howard.
Yeah.
And hey, what about that new guy? Well, he's really nice, but he's really kind of weird, isn't he? Yeah, he's kind of weird. So everybody had a nickname, and he was given the name How Weird. and he hated it at first. And he literally came in at one point and said to me, "Why does everybody call me How Weird?" And I used to kid back with him. I said, "Because you're weird, Howard." He goes, and he'd walk out of the room. And he was uncomfortable with it at first. And then he did embrace it as well for a while in his early career. He went by the name How Weird. And then he eventually dropped it. But Howard was always very nice. He was completely different from what his eventual persona was.
Yeah, but embracing your weirdness, embracing your differentness, your uniqueness, I think that's one of the messages that we send as comics to the world. You know, and also you're not alone. All those things are very positive.
I've gotten so many wonderful letters from people that are saying, they felt different, they felt like an outcast or an outsider, and listening to my music made them realize it gets better. You can, it's okay to be different. And by the way, I should point out that Howard Stern, oddly enough, looked very much like what I did at the time as well. I had the glasses and the aviator frames and the poodle do.
The mustache.
Yeah.
He wasn't a weird person. He was actually a very kind person.
Focused.
He did TM in his car before he came up and did his show every day. I think looking back at it, maybe it was weird because he didn't know who he was yet.
Right. But in your case, Al, when did you come out? When did you say, hey, I like writing song parodies, or I like making music, or I like being... Oh, yeah, you were a class clown, weren't you?
I don't know how many people really thought of me as a class clown. I was like the high school valedictorian. I was more of the straight A student, prototypical nerd. My close friends probably enjoyed my humor, but I think other than the people that were exposed to me through the Dr. Demento show, I don't think a lot of people in high school thought of me quite that way. But yeah, Dr. Demento was really how I, really kind of came into my own.
That was your coming out?
Yeah.
When did you start sending him material?
Oh gosh, I think my first, when I was like 13, I think I sent him my first tape, and I don't think he even kept that. I think that wound up in the trash.
Wow.
I think there were a couple before this that he played, but the first thing that caught any attention at all was My Bologna, which wound up being eventually released, on Capitol Records.
Now, how did it turn out that you ended up working at Westwood One?
Well, Westwood One was the company that syndicated the Dr. Demento show, so I kind of had a foot in the door. So when I graduated from college with a degree in architecture that I knew I was never going to use, I thought, well, maybe I'll, take a, minimum wage job in the mailroom at this place, and at least I can be on the fringes of, rock and Dr. Demento, and at least be around the people that I'm trying to emulate. So, and it was nice. I mean, I was doing grunt labor and getting people's lunch and taking out the mail, but at the same time, I would bump into Frank Zappa. I would bump into whoever was being interviewed that day. So it was actually a pretty cool gig.
The moment that sort of happened for you was at Cal Poly, where you were using the bathroom because of the acoustics when you were doing the Nax on My Sharona, and there's a plaque in the bathroom saying this is the birthplace of Weird Al.
That's pretty amazing. I think the plaque just went up a couple of years ago, but it's pretty mind-blowing. They called that bathroom Studio 229 because it was directly across the hall from the old campus radio station. And whenever somebody wanted to sound like they were doing a remote, they would run lines from the production room into the bathroom because it had this nice reverb sound. It sounded very
sure.
It's a very nice sound, and we thought, we'll just record in there. So that was that was the place. We just set up the mic next to a urinal, and I rocked it out.
When you first got started, you wanted to find a producer for your record, and you met up with an old hero of mine, Rick Derringer.
Yeah.
I was a big Johnny Winter, Edgar Winter fan. and Rick Derringer was always there with them. And now, he was just starting out as a producer, right? So this was early on.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what he'd done producer-wise. He was a rock god, obviously. But this would have been like 1982 that I got involved with Rick. And the way that happened was his manager at the time, Jake Hooker, was part of the Arrows, which was the band that originally recorded the song I Love Rock and Roll, which Joan Jett covered. And when I was trying to get permission to do my parody, I Love Rocky Road, we had to go through Jake Hooker. And he said, not only will I let you do this, but, you need a producer for your album, and I represent, Rick Derringer, and would you be interested in that? And I was like, yes. And Rick was into it, and that was the beginning. Rick produced my first 6 albums, my entire output during the 80s.
Wow. What was it like working with him?
Amazing. Rick was so great, and I mean, just a guitar legend. Eddie Van Halen just passed away, and Rick totally copied his guitar solo for the Eat It video, because Eddie did it on Beat It. And I have such a strong memory of him recording that solo because, I mean, the solo's, 10 seconds long or something, but in the studio, he played the solo like 10 seconds long, and after it, he was literally drenched with sweat. He was like, he put so much into that, it was just palpable. It was just amazing to watch. But yeah, just a great guy, too.
Can I ask you, Al, what were some of your early influences? I know Elton John and the Yellow Brick Road was something that kind of got you into the rock and roll era. But when you were a kid growing up, did you listen to Spike Jones? Did you listen to comedy records in general?
Yeah, again, through the Dr. Demento show. I mean, obviously Fire Sign, but I mean, my Mount Rushmore of influences that I always credit are Spike Jones, Stan Freberg, Alan Sherman, and Tom Lehrer. Those are probably the main 4. But I mean, on top of that, obviously, Shel Silverstein and SCTV and Zappa, and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, I draw from a lot of influences.
And did you know that Tom Lehrer invented the Jell-O shot?
I think I'd heard that before. He did that like back at Harvard, I guess?
Yeah, well, at his school, wherever he was teaching, because he couldn't have a bottled whiskey in his office. So he would make Jell-O shots and put them in his refrigerator. I love that.
Interesting.
A record that had a major influence on me was all of George Carlin's work.
George Carlin.
George Carlin's AM/FM really was a breakthrough album, and you literally transcribed the album
on a manual typewriter. Yeah, and that was one of those albums because of my protective upbringing. I'm surprised that my parents allowed me to buy that album in the first place. But when I listened to it, I had to listen with my ear right up against the speaker because I didn't want them to hear the dirty words.
Right. Here, I'm going to sing something to you, and you tell me if you remember hearing it. When der Führer says, wie ist der Messerreis, wie heil, heil, right in the Führer's face. Not to love the Führer is a great disgrace, so wie heil, heil, right in the Führer's face.
I love Spike Jones, but why does he have to get so political? Come on!
Yeah, I think they used it also in a Disney cartoon called Naziland.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, where all the Germans were squirrels, and I think Donald Duck was prepared for war, and oh, my God.
Going down this list of your hits, Eat It, Huey Lewis's I Want a New Drug to I Want a New Duck, She Drives Me Crazy, She Drives Like Crazy, Addicted to Love, Addicted to Spuds, I Think We're Alone Now, I Think I'm a Clone Now, Zoot Suit Riot into Grapefruit Diet, and Girls Just Want to Have Fun into Girls Just Want to Have Lunch. These are not political songs, are they?
No.
No, in general, I actually try to stay away from politics just for 2 main reasons. One is that it ages very poorly. Especially these days. I mean, the news cycle is like 5 minutes long. But, even back in the before times, political humor doesn't have much of a shelf life. So that's one big reason. And the other reason, especially these days, is it's so polarizing. I'm not anxious to lose half my fan base or have hordes of people trying to actually kill me. So, right, so I tend to stay away from politics in general unless I can do it in a way that's, I think, is very nonpartisan.
That's a credit to you that you've been able to have such a successful career and not getting political.
That's right.
And keeping it G-rated and clean. I'm thrilled because for once we can put out a podcast that doesn't have the explicit warning on it. Everybody always drops the F-bomb eventually. That's a credit to you in this cynical day and age, and it's wonderful.
Well, thanks.
One of the things that I admire so much about your career is that you have, how can I say it, exploited in a very creative way the various kinds of media platforms that have been evolving over the 30 years that you've been doing this work.
Yeah, from being a godsend to the early MTV.
MTV, that's right. That's admirable.
Well, thank you. I'm not going to swear that I'm never going to put out another album, but I'd say it's highly, highly unlikely. I just don't feel like, which is ironic because my last album did extremely well, but I feel like it's better for me to just be more responsive to contemporary zeitgeist, to just do stuff when it feels appropriate and get stuff out there when I feel it should be out there. And because in the old model, I would have to wait until I had 12 songs and then put them out all at once. And some of them would be timely, and some of them, this would have been better if it came out 2 years ago, you know? When my contract ran out after 32 years, my label was very anxious to sign me up for another period of time, and I just didn't want to do that because I didn't want to feel encumbered. I like the feeling of not owing something to somebody. And also, if you're not under contract, you don't have to get permission from people. Because I've in this year since Mandatory Fun, I've done a number of projects where under the old circumstances, I would have had to officially contact my label. Is it okay if I work with this person? Is it okay if they release this? And they'd have to make a deal, and it got very messy. And I like the idea of me being my own person and just doing literally anything I feel like and putting it out whenever I feel like, and not have to wait in a way that would be better for the record label.
Things are so unsettled in all business channels and distribution, and to be in a position where you feel comforted and sort of more secure by letting go of the past and embracing sort of this wild frontier of media now, where pretty much anything goes.
Yeah.
Congratulations on Doomed. I saw it for the first time on the New York Times op-ed page, which really threw me. And I was like, wait a minute, what's Weird Al doing in the New York Times? I checked back a couple of days ago on the YouTube channel, and you had 2.5 million views, and that's extraordinary. And you are able to sort of hover above all the turmoil, aren't you?
A bit, and I have to first of all just make it clear that that was the Gregory brothers. I mean, it was their idea. It's their concept. They do these debate videos every time there's a major election, and they were nice enough to invite me back. I did one 4 years ago, actually, with the debate, the third debate between Trump and Clinton. And this was fun to do. And I actually recorded. I hate to give away the magic of it, but I actually recorded my part 2 or 3 days before the actual debate, because we knew what the topics were going to be. We had a pretty good idea that it was just going to be a train wreck. And so I recorded my questions, again, nonpartisan, and then the actual night of the debate, that was all the Gregory brothers just staying up all night long and editing all those clips together. So they were really in charge of the content there.
You are the master of the trade. I mean, you don't do political, and yet you just got well over 2 million downloads of parodying a political debate.
Yeah.
What is the distinction there? Where did you not cross the political line?
Well, a lot of people have said that piece is slanted, and I don't think it is, but whether it is or not, that wasn't me doing the slanting. I thought my questions were very nonpartisan. They were very open-ended questions. In fact, if you see me in the video, you see me going, well, and and oh. And so, and all those reactions were also recorded ahead of the debate. I didn't know what I was going to be reacting to. They just said, oh, give us 20 or so different random reactions. And I did, oh, well, so. And then they edited it after the fact. So I didn't know at the time what I was even responding to.
Having seen so many of your videos over the decades, watching this one, there's nothing like being in the moment and turning that around within 24 hours of the debate. It was so powerfully relevant, and it really put a spotlight on you again and how good a singer you are.
Oh, thank you. What kind of amazes me is I recorded that at home downstairs on the same microphone and the same setup that I'm using at this very second. So
wow.
that wasn't recorded in a fancy recording studio. That was just me at home with with my laptop. And it made me realize, well, why am I spending thousands of dollars in the studio? Why don't I just do this at home?
When you and I, when we started working in the recording industry, those records were like, to me, unidentified flying objects. They were big discs, at least when we started, and they would be flung out into the audience, into the world, and some people would see them and say, "Oh, hey, that's really great. I'd like to listen to that," and others would ignore it. But that's what's happening now. You see, it's all private. People were listening when we made our records in the privacy of their own homes. Okay, we knew that our stuff would not. A 20-minute piece wasn't going to be played on the radio, right?
I played it on the radio. In fact, when I was a DJ in college, when I worked at my first commercial radio station, which was KZOZ in San Luis Obispo, I was like the overnight guy, and you could always tell when the overnight guy had to go to the bathroom. It was like they put on a whole side of Firesign Theater.
What Bergman used to do on Radio Free Oz on KPFK was to put on a raga. You know, and we'd go out and get stoned in the parking lot, you know, pee in the bushes and come back, you know.
Right.
But yes, it's true. But that's what's happening now. You put something out there, it's private, and people, you know, can absorb it at their own time, in their own privacy of their own dungeons and bunkers, and you know, and then you have a success.
And speaking of bunkers, the last few months of our show, Bunker to Bunker, because we're in bunkers, we're all isolated, and we always ask our guests, you know, how are you coping with this extraordinary situation? Another parallel, we both had a kid in 2003, so we both started late in life, which it's turned out to be a gift for me, because I was just much more present.
Totally. I mean, I'm glad that I had a child at this point in my life, because I feel like I can, you know, appreciate it more now and focus more of my attention on raising my kid, and it all worked out very well.
Is she in 12th grade?
Yeah, she's a senior. She's in her senior year. She's. I mean, you know, I'm dealing with the pandemic as well as I possibly can be. I mean, I wish, you know, we lived in a normal world right now, of course. But you know, I'm okay staying at home all the time. I don't mind it quite as much. But I mean, my daughter is, you know, a senior in high school, and she wishes, obviously, that she had more of a real life, and she was like, you know, this year we're going to be traveling all around the country, looking at potential colleges. She has a lot of friends that she wants to be hanging out with, so it's a bummer for her most of all.
Our daughter her whole social life is circled on music, and senior year, she's section leader of her marching band, which is her pride and joy. And you know, marching band right now, remotely,
not quite the same thing.
I just feel so bad for her because she's not going to get it back. I just hope that our girls get a chance to have a semi-normal first year in college at this point.
I know.
My darling daughter is 45 years old now, but my grandkids, 9 and 12, little girl, little boy, they're being homeschooled by my daughter, and it's just
driving her nuts.
Driving her absolutely crazy. Crazy.
I think we're lucky that our kids are seniors in high school. At least they're getting a year of independent study ahead of time.
Right.
We set up a desk in her bedroom. We said, honey, this is like your first year of college in a dorm room.
Yeah.
You know, this is it. This is it.
Good practice.
You'll be so ready now.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. I have a question for you, Al. Are you aware of other parodists and satirists who exist today, like Randy Rainbow?
Oh, obviously, yeah. I mean, Randy's a genius. I think he's great.
I agree.
I'm glad that Randy exists because, I mean, there's been a bit of a vacuum because I've kind of dropped out a little bit in terms of my, putting out material partly because, you know, the world has been so, you know, what it is for the last few years that it's kind of hard, you know, if I put out something frivolous or non-related to that, it just kind of feels like I'm not reading the room. So I'm glad there's somebody to pick up the slack since I'm not doing political humor to actually address what's going on.
Al, you have a new song. Tell us about it.
Well, it's not my song per se. It's Portugal the Man put out a single recently. And Portugal the Man is one of my favorite groups. They're old friends of mine. I've performed with them at Bonnaroo. I actually did a couple remixes of their singles. They've been fans of mine for a long time, so they asked me to do a remix of Feel It Still and Live in the Moment, and they wanted me to do my polka remixes, so I did those. So we've kind of had this long-standing relationship going. And in fact, they played the Tonight Show, and on their drum head they printed a picture of my face with the caption, "Weird Al Yankovic made us what we are today."
Oh, man.
So they've been very sweet and very supportive, and they asked me to be featured on their latest single. So I'm actually singing on this single called "Who's Gonna Stop Me?" And it came out on Indigenous Peoples Day, and it supports Indigenous people's rights. And it's a nice departure for me because it's not novelty, it's not funny at all. You know, they just have me singing seriously on it. I sing the second verse. I sing throughout the whole song. I'm in the video, so it's nice to be included in that. It's just I don't know how people. Some people might be raising an eyebrow about me appearing in a song like that or a video like that, but you know, that's one of the nice things where I am right now. I can do anything I feel like, and that was something that I was very excited about doing.
This is important. We want this song to hit because you have had a song in the top 40 every decade for the last 4 decades. And you're in rare company.
Astounding.
But if this record hits, this will make it a 5th decade. And does that make you
I would be the only one. If this record hits top 40, that would be the only person to have a top 40 single in the last 5 decades. Yeah.
Wow.
Let's make it happen, folks.
Yeah, let's do this. Go download now. With 4 decades.
It was myself, Michael Jackson, Madonna, U2, and Kenny G. So all of my close personal friends.
Yeah.
You're in this small group of greats for 4 decades record. Now, if you hit with this record or some other record in the next couple of years, you're going to be all by yourself as the top, the king.
It's lonely at the top, yeah.
That's amazing. Has this situation, the pandemic and all, has it sparked ideas for you as far as what you want to do next?
Not really. I mean, I want to keep doing music, but most of my attention these days has been toward other projects. I wrote a screenplay last year, which we're in the middle of trying to get financed. I'm in the middle of pitching a TV show. There's a children's show which I'd been pitching for a few years, which I think that's probably dead at this point. But I mean, there's all these projects that unfortunately I can't go into specifics or talk about them right now. But I've been. It's not like I haven't been doing anything. I've been trying to get all these other things off the ground and try to do things that I haven't really had the option or possibility of doing before.
Now, you also wrote some children's books, didn't you?
I did, and actually, what I was just talking about was supposed to be like the TV version of that, so based on those books.
Oh,
but yeah,
good.
I did a couple of books for HarperCollins years ago, When I Grow Up and My New Teacher and Me. So that was a lot of fun. I haven't written a children's book in a while, and maybe I'll get back to that.
Al, you could write one, My Virtual Teacher and Me.
There you go. Depending on how long this goes on, we might have to have some, Zoom related children's books coming out.
Well, thank you so much for taking time during the pandemic.
I've got nothing but time during the pandemic.
Yeah, if you get lonely, we'll call you again.
Sounds good. Well, this was a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.
Love you, Al.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
He's just the best.
It speaks to the strength of his spirit and his consciousness and his conscience.
Well, it's good to see you. We'll be back with our next episode of Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your player.
What is that? Well, let me just look.
Yeah, just right. You just hit that subscribe
this thing here.
button. Yeah.
Wait a minute. I just ordered 200 tins of lizard meat. Oh, no.
Well, it's always good to have that in the bunker. So long.
You've been listening to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show, featuring Phil Proctor and Ted Bonnet and special guest, Weird Al Yankovic. Rock and Roll Memory Bank was written and performed by the Firesign Theater. Music by Eddie Betos and the Nervous Brothers. I'm A. Ernest Guy. Join us for the next episode of Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show, produced by RadioPictures.com, the makers of fine podcasts for boomers. Okay.